So let's start. Thanks for having me here. Thank you, Hugo. Welcome, everyone. As I know that I'm used to talking a lot, I'm trying to get through my presentation as quick as possible. And my current SharePoint framework extension is based on a real use case and inspired by many discussions with my customers. It's all about management of document templates. And I know there are a couple of ways to handle document template management in a Microsoft Office context, but I'm not talking about template management in a Microsoft Office context or content processing in SharePoint Premium. Today, I'm talking about template management in a company context, all backed up by the common SharePoint online service. And let's discuss how to expose company templates within SharePoint Online. My name is Tobias. I'm a M365 consultant based out of Switzerland, and my main focus is on SharePoint Online, SharePoint provisioning, and the Power Platform. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach me on LinkedIn or on X. Would be my very pleasure. So when working with my customers, I was often asked how to best organize company templates in SharePoint Online, and it was about the global management and use of templates. And indeed, there are a few options that come out of the box. I won't comment them in detail, but let me quickly bring up 3 pure out of the box options. First of all, create a new document library or select an existing one and make it read-only. Users navigate to the library to look for one or more given templates and download or copy them to the desired location. Yeah, sure it works, but a second one would be integrate the given set of templates in the new menu in every document library. Yeah, so far I haven't figured out if I like this approach or not. But third approach is define an org assets library, and that's an interesting idea because org assets libraries are very useful in terms of management of templates that are handled or that are used outside of SharePoint Online. An org assets library integrates seamlessly into all of the Microsoft Office tools, and that's nice because the users can access their templates right from the app where they need the templates. But in a scenario where you want to use your document template catalog directly in any SharePoint document library, unfortunately, this approach doesn't work. And therefore, let me introduce another option, the company templates extension. And it renders a button in the command bar that calls up a modal dialog in which the user can browse through all the company templates. And the displayed templates come from a centrally managed document library that serves as a template store. Okay, demo time now. But before I dig into the demo, let me say a word about the used components. From the PnP reusable components, I've chosen the site picker, the list picker, and the tree view component, because these UI components offer ready to go drop downs and hierarchical view controls, and they're excellent. I couldn't have implemented it any better than they did. And the Fluent UI provides the known awesome layout components, and the PnP.js library, which I used, powers the whole implementation of file handling, actions, and procedures within the extension. And that's it for the prerequisites. Definitely time for the demo now. To save some time, I've already set up a document library that serves as template store. There you can see it's quite a normal template document library. Sorry, within SharePoint, it's within a communication site that acts as a brand central, and it's built up on several folders, which contains all those templates that are used company-wide. So navigate to a document library of your choice and select the command action to open the company template browser. And if the SharePoint extension is deployed tenant-wide to the tenant app via the tenant app catalog, which is the case for this demo, the extension is really available in every document library within the whole SharePoint tenant. So navigate to a document library of your choice, doesn't matter what kind of site is behind, and select the command action to open in the company template browser. The visibility of this command action depends on the permissions of the current user. It is only accessible when the user has permissions to add items to this given library. So click on it to open, and there we go. These are our company templates, which I showed you before. And these are organized in a clear and simple folder structure. Simply browse through all your company templates that you have access to, or that you have allowed access to, I mean, that you are allowed to see, because the view is always rendered in the user's context from a permissions point of view. Just a word about the content structure of the template store. As the company's template store can be any document library of your choice. You can set up any folder structure as it best fits your need. And yeah, that said, you're absolutely free how you organize it. So keep in mind that this is a SharePoint extension, and from a permissions point of view, the extension relies on the permissions that are set in your template store library, and therefore the objects that the user can browse through are all evaluated in the permissions context of the current user. So if you're a site admin, and only if, then you additionally can you have access to the admin settings. In bigger company, it's good practice that only SharePoint admins are site admins. And in this dedicated view, you can configure the settings for your company templates extension, which apply to the entire tenant. Here, you declare the site and the library where all templates are stored. You only have to point to that library, which I showed you at the beginning of my presentation, as well as the optional field that allows you to group your templates into categories of your choice. But this is not mandatory, so you can select this optionally. Be aware that only one dedicated library tenant-wide can act as a template store. This could be either an org assets library, which would be an interesting scenario because you would combine the features of the org assets library with the company templates extension, or a simple document library, as I mentioned before. When you save the settings, they are globally stored in a SharePoint tenant property, which I'm not going to save now to save some time. I'm going to click cancel and return to this main menu. Let's discuss the search and the filtering options. As an end user, if I may be looking for a manual, I have to choose manual from this filter category drop-down, and see this all templates with manuals or with manual will show up or will be filtered out. Or let's assume we're looking. Yeah, let's select this one, those tools, or let's assume I'm looking for a calculation sheet for an ETL service calculation. It's not going to be a manual, so there we go. I'm going to select this one as well, and all those matching files are appearing on my screen. Of course, you could combine your filter and search terms. It's that easy as I showed before. So if you're good to go with your filtered selection and your search results, select the desired files as I did, and start the copy process by clicking on the Copy Templates button. As you can imagine, all the selected templates will be copied from the template store to your current destination, which means the folder within the current library where you actually are. So just to make sure I did not tell anything wrong, just refresh, shows up that these three guys came from this template store. And just one word on the copy process, in case you're about to copy a template whose name matches the name of another file that is already stored in this location. Don't worry, no files will be overwritten. Instead, an appropriate error message would show up. And yeah, that's so far for the demo. Let me show you now some parts how I implemented it. And the magic starts with the company templates component. It's a functional React component that takes the current context as a property and wraps all necessary components. And first of all, inside here, let's discuss the permission handling. As I told before, the visibility of the command button depends on a permission check. In case that the current user has permissions to add items to a document library, the button is rendered as visible. As you can see here, the user's list permissions are coming from the actual context of the user, and it is evaluated on this row here, and if the permissions match the permissions to add list items, the templates command would be rendered as visible. Admin settings are only available for site admin users, and there's also a check if a user is site admin, and this is implemented via a React state and the use effect hook, which is invoked at component load. Page handling. There are two pages or page components or view components that contain the views with all the UI elements. The settings views, which I showed you before, which contains all the admin stuff. I mean, these drop downs to configure the template store, and the standard view, which renders all the company templates. To navigate from one view to another, I've implemented a simple page navigator, kind of a simple mini router, which is realized through a React hook. And with this, starting from any component or any view, you can pass a navigation request to any targeted view via the navigate to method of the use page navigator hook, and the targeted view then is displayed or rendered based on the user's on the router's property selected page, which you can see here. Now to something a bit more difficult or not that easy. It's a global stage management, which was implemented via React's context provider. And we needed a centralized state management to ensure that all components are accessing the shared state context information and act correctly, because multiple components, for example, the command bar component and the view components, need to have access to the same state, because when company templates have to be copied from the store to the current location, the user has made his or has set up his filters and has filtered out all the documents that have to be copied, and the command bar, for example, has to access all those filtered or all those selected documents and bring them from the template store to the current location. And these different components share data objects, and these state context objects will be mutated or accessed by different components. That's what I told you right now. And it's in the responsibility of this context provider, I mean, this is the templates management context provider, to ensure that the application state is always correct. And long story short, conclusion, centralizing state management, in this case, via React context provider, makes it much easier, almost, at least to me, to maintain the whole code base and state context mutations over different components, because you handle the app state in one central provider, and there's no need to propagate state information via component props in React. Now to something completely different. When copying files from one SharePoint location to another, I recommend always do it with PnP.js, but make sure you use PnP.js the right way. make sure you initialize the source web with by using the absolute URL that indicates the target, the source, and not the relative URL. Otherwise, this leads to unexpected side effects, which took me a quite long time to figure out how this doesn't work properly. Thanks to Corey Rode. I don't know if you're here, but thanks to you, you saved me nevertheless a lot of time. The extension settings, last but not least, are globally stored in a so-called SharePoint online tenant properties. And the use of PnP.js makes these SharePoint tenant properties accessible in a read-only state to any SharePoint user that uses this templates extension. And just to make it clear, although only tenant admins have write access on tenant properties, the use of the PnP.js library can provide read-only access to the SharePoint tenant properties data in the context of any user, which brings me the ability to store document library settings centrally and globally in one tenant property. And how cool is that? With this, I'm going to conclude. Unfortunately, list view command sets are still not working in Microsoft Teams document libraries. This would be really great added value if this would work. And when it comes to file handling, always do it with PnP.js when you'd have to do it programmatically. But be careful when copying files from one location to another, just to avoid using side effects. And thanks to Dan, my partner in crime, for code reviews and any question that you will give, any answer that you give me on my questions. I really appreciate that. Yeah, okay, let's stop here. As I told you, I could talk the whole day long, but I say thank you again. And but now enough is enough. And with that, back to you, Hugo.